Dear Jesus, we ask this morning that by your Spirit we would be renewed once again in faith. Amen. I remember sitting one day next to Wilfred Backel. His wife of over 50 years had just been moved to a care facility. In fact, where we were sitting, I'm recalling now in my mind, was in a room there in that facility. And he looked at me just with longing in his eyes, this man of faith. And he said, Jesus healed others. Why can't he heal her? His wife had been moved into the care facility because she no longer recognized Wilfred. She thought he was an intruder in their own home. How he longed to have his wife back. This man of faith took the gospel stories like the one we just heard for gospel truth. That Jesus was capable of healing, that Jesus could make all things new, and he longed to see that for himself, for his life. I don't remember how I responded to Wilfred, but I will never forget this man of faith's question. What Melanie said is true. This faith business can be a little tricky. Sometimes it just plain can be a hard sell. For sure, we've caught glimpses of God. Like our children explained so beautifully, all the ways that we can see God. But truth be told, if you're like me, you probably wish that God would actually show up in ways that you could see a little more often. So Hebrews 11, verse 1 begins with this soaring verse. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for. Say that with me. Now faith is the assurance of things hoped for. The next part says, the conviction of things not seen. Let's say that. The conviction of things not seen. Hebrews 11, 1. There are some verses it's just good to have on the tip of your tongue. The writer of the letter to the Hebrews is saying this hard truth, that not everybody gets the privilege of seeing what they hope for, what they long for, what they pray for, what they plead for to God. The ones who came before Jesus and hoped in God's promise certainly didn't. And we get so many examples in that Hebrews chapter 11. Abraham was promised land, among other things, but land to live on for his family, for his descendants. But at the time of his death, the only land that he possessed was the small parcel that he had purchased to lay his wife Sarah to rest, a tomb. I think of our immigrant forebears. It was striking to be in New Orleans just a few days ago and walk along the banks of the Mississippi, and there facing the river was a statue, a monument to immigrants. And I was thinking of your ancestors and mine who came and settled the prairies of the great Midwest. But this statue was put up by children of immigrants who had come to the United States in 1964 from Croatia, and who came with hopes for their children. And their children put up that monument as a tribute to the hope that drove their parents to venture out, to leave their native land, to come to a new place. As immigrants have, as a movement of peoples who have left their homes and have moved from place to place throughout the millennia have, leaving what they left behind, often never to see their families again, to do the slogging hard work of learning new language, new culture, with the hope that their children will have something better, will live in prosperity. The letter to the Hebrews writes of a faith in God that drove the giants of the faith to act, even though they were being asked to do crazy things. Noah, in faith, built an ark at a time when there were no rain clouds in the sky and was mocked by his friends and neighbors. Did I mention this faith thing is a hard sell? Yet verse 39 says, "Yet all of these, though they were commended for their faith, did not receive what was promised." I know you come to church for encouragement. I'm trying to find it here. They did not receive what was promised. But then the verse goes on. Since God had provided something better, so that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect. You have to think about that verse, that ending. So that they would not, apart from us, be made perfect. The hope was that they would bring us along. Dear church, this whole lineup of faithful ones that we hear in Hebrews chapter 11 was leading all the while to Jesus, whose saving grace reaches back across the ages to those who had hoped but who didn't see him, and to us, into the present, even into the future of those who will know him, who will yet see him and receive his saving mercies also through faith. We gather as people of faith. And we are people who launch out again and again, time after time, like those who have gone before us, not knowing where we're going, but knowing that God is going with us. In faith, this church, this community of faith, under different names, the Church on the Hill, the Norwegian Church, the American Lutheran Church, was founded 137 years ago, 1882, and has been the spiritual home for thousands across the decades and generations. And in faith, we continue on. We baptize, we teach, we preach, we love and serve. We bury our dead, hoping against hope that what we cannot see is true, that there is life beyond this one. As the writer writes, in a city that has foundations, not like this shaky earth on which we live, but foundations whose architect and builder is God. When I was thinking about the history of our church, I went to the cupboard in the copy room behind the office and pulled out an old directory. Some of them, like this one from 2000, have beautiful histories of the church. And it was fun to see a whole bunch of you almost 20 years ago here in the directory, and that some I didn't know. And on the back was a mission statement. A mission statement. Curiously, though, we've been through 2 mission statements and landed on a different one since then, resembles very much our church from today. As I read it, I realized that in faith, this church has welcomed people of all ages and stations in life to a community of faith where through the good news about Jesus, each may experience love, acceptance, understanding, encouragement, and hope. 2000. We don't always fully accomplish this. I was thinking as I read it. We falter, even as the community to which the letter of Hebrews was faltering. We look to gain our grounding even when the earth is shifting under our feet. But this letter was written to say to those who would receive it, take courage. The great cloud of witnesses are those who have gone before us in faith. And we are like a runner in a long-distance race who is being cheered on each side by the crowds that line the runner's path. So the Message paraphrase of Hebrews chapter 12 sounds like this. Do you see what all this means? All these on each side, all these are pioneers who blazed the way, all these veterans cheering us on. It means we better get on with it. Strip down, start running, and never quit. No extra spiritual fat, no parasitic sins. Keep your eyes on Jesus, like we sang just a few minutes ago, who both began and finished this race we're in. Study how he did it, because he never lost sight of where he was headed. That exhilarating finish in and with God, he could put up with anything along the way. Cross, shame, whatever. And now he's there in the place of honor right alongside God. And when you find yourself flagging in faith, go over that story again and again, item by item, that long litany of hostility that he plowed through. And that will shoot adrenaline into your souls. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. We may suffer, but not like he did. And when you're struggling to find Jesus, to find his face, to see where God may be acting in your life, we have each other. So turn to a fellow believer for encouragement. That's why we're here. That's why we live in community. We're not isolated people of faith. We're in this together. So talk to each other about where God is acting in your life or where you're struggling, so that a sister or brother in the faith can build you up and remind you of this story of our Lord Jesus and cheer you on. And then take communion regularly. It's offered once a week, whether Sunday morning or Saturday night, Wednesday night, because there we have something real, something tangible in our hand, the body and blood of our Lord Jesus for the forgiveness of sins, food for the journey that becomes part of our body and our lives. We believe, dear people of faith, together we believe that our hope in God is not misplaced, and that one day, as the great hymn says, our faith will be sight. The empty cross and our forgiven lives make it clear that that change is already begun. Amen.